Welcome to the Age is Irrelevant podcast with your host, Helen Fridge. Helen is a 60-plus, lifelong competitive athlete, flight attendant, published fitness model, writer, IFBB bodybuilding pro, and certified wine specialist who believes that your age is irrelevant to pursue goals, dreams, and desires. Are you a woman in her 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond who still has a burning desire to pursue a dream or a passion? Are you thinking about starting a new chapter in your life, but you're hesitant, thinking that you might be too old or just don't know where to begin? The Age is Irrelevant podcast is a podcast devoted to women who want to defy the odds, smash barriers, and redefine happiness and success after 40. It's time to make a difference. There is no need to dread blowing out that added birthday candle every year. A new movement is slowly taking momentum, where being over the hill just isn't relevant anymore. Age labels are being thrown out the window, and women are rediscovering the strength within themselves to make a difference, not only within their own lives, but also touching and inspiring the lives of other women. Join Helen as she and her guests discuss all aspects of aging after 40 and how to make the aging process and those twilight years more rewarding, exciting, and fun.
Hello and welcome to the Age is Irrelevant podcast. I'm your host, Helen Fridge, and this is episode number 88. Now, today is a very compelling, very special interview with me. I am interviewing 62-year-old Helen Polise. Now, by trade, Helen is a TV commercial director with 30-plus years experience, elevating global brands such as Sensodyne, Blistex, Hasbro, the NFL, alumni, and much, much more. But during the pandemic, she quickly turned to TikTok and started teaching how to use TikTok, and now has almost 1 million followers, me being one of them, and she is larger than life on TikTok. And I wanted to interview her because, as you all know, if you're a regular listener, I do have a tendency to interview mainly female masters athletes at the local level, regional level, national level, world championship level. And I want to interview women who are inspirational, motivational, and transformational, just to prove to you every single podcast that age is irrelevant and it's never too late to start something new. What I love about Helen's story is she may not be a champion athlete, but she's a definite champion in my eyes, everything that she has gone through over the last year. She is extremely motivational. She is extremely transformational and inspirational. We'll get into her health scare, which caused me to really be alarmed, not even knowing this person personally, but seeing her story unfold before our very eyes, and how she never lost her positivity. She never lost her smile, even though she was going through hell. I am so impressed with her grit and her determination to have that eyes always forward mantra. And today she's back, and just hearing her story is going to really put a soft spot in your heart too. So please let me introduce you to Helen Polise. It was such an honor and a privilege to hear her and allow her to share her story. Here we go. Hi, Helen. Welcome to the show.
Nice to see you, Helen. That is the first time I've gotten to say that on a podcast.
I know, but I do have to ask you, who were you named after?
You know what happened? My dad and mom named me at the hospital Elena, Elena. And then when they got home, they thought it was too fancy. So they went back and they changed my name at the hospital. So I was supposed to be Elena. And I have a great Aunt Helen, of course, they all do. So they thought that was a little bit more.
An Aunt Helen. Yeah. So
isn't that funny? But I was Elena at first, and now I'm not.
That's awesome. And of course, today it's like, in school, I couldn't get away with anything because I was pretty much the only Helen in the class.
Right.
And then today, if I hear or see a child named Helen, I'm like, oh, they were named after a grandmother or something, because it's, it's just
so true. And it's funny because the name's coming back a little.
It is.
Every time I meet someone that's Helen, it's usually somebody that's older. It's very rare when it's a peer. So
Right.
It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, same here. So for my listeners, I am talking to Helen Polise. Now, Helen is 62 years old, and she's also known as the TikTok teacher on TikTok. She's the owner of Mothership Productions, which is a and she's a TV commercial director with 30 plus years experience elevating global brands like Sensodyne, Blistex, Hasbro, NFL, alumni, and more. After a quick rise to TikTok fame during the pandemic, where she currently has over 880,000 followers, and I am one of them on her platform. She recently founded Socialize. It's hellosocialize.com. It's a startup where she demystifies the social media process and teaches people step by step on how to create content while building with a community of people of all ages and skill levels who have a passion for learning about social media. Now, the main reason why I have Helen on the show is because I think TikTok started around 2016. I'm thinking in the fall, maybe. I think I read somewhere. And when it first came out, it was just like, young. They were just showing lots of young kids. And I'm like, well, I'm already on Facebook and I'm dabbling in Instagram now. I don't need all that. And all of a sudden, I think during the pandemic, when we were all stuck at home and bored, I discovered, TikTok. And now it's like, oh my God, I've learned so much on TikTok. I mean, I'm highly amused by some of the videos, but really things that have come in so handy for me, learning like kitchen stuff and how to wear this and what to do. And then I found you, and I'm not a tech nerd in social media at all as far as editing and doing all that stuff. So I was thrilled to find you. But I'm having you on the show because of your amazing story, and we'll get into that. I always like to start off in the beginning about where you're born and, how you grew up and where and what you were interested in school. So let's start at the beginning, and we'll keep that other good stuff towards the end.
Let's do it. I love that. I'm a Jersey girl, born and raised, and I even raised my kids in New Jersey. And then after my kids all left for college, that's when we moved into New York City. So now I consider myself a city girl. But I've always been from the East Coast area, traveled a lot during my work years. When I was studying in school, I majored in music and realized I don't want to be a concert pianist. So what am I going to do now? So I changed my major to music business, thought I'd work in a recording studio, and I ended up in advertising. So I have been producing TV commercials for 35 plus years, and I loved it. I did toy commercials for a long time and then transitioned into testimonial, real life story type work, and I work on Sensodyne. So that's a lot of testimonial interviews with dentists and users of the toothpaste. And that's kind of my work background.
Okay, well, that's perfect. Okay. So as we're in our 20s and 30s, tell us what happened in that little era.
Okay, so that era was a lot of fun because when I first started in the industry, I was, lucky for me, able to travel for shoots. They always sent us to crazy places to shoot toy commercials, which is crazy. I was in Toronto for 3 weeks for my first shoot. I was in Amsterdam shooting. I've gone to Australia multiple times to shoot My Little Pony commercials back in the day. Wow. So I did a lot of traveling. And then when I decided to met my husband, marry, and settle down and have kids, I needed to change the travel part of work because I didn't want to be away from my new baby for, months at a time. And so I did take a more of a local advertising job. And that's when I worked with Tiger Electronics. And that's when the launch of Furby came into play. So I was involved, got to meet a lot of famous musicians when I worked on Hit Clips, which was a music toy before TikTok was, before MP3s even. There were little clips that you could put into a sound machine and you could play 15 seconds of your favorite song. So that was like TikTok back in the 80s.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's move on up to your 40s.
Okay, so then let's see, 30s, raised kids, managed to multitask my way through working and raising a family. And I have a podcast where I talked about this very much in depth about, my daughter and I talked about the things that I feel like I missed and some of the compromises I made because I met women later in life who were like, you're so lucky you have this great career. And I'm like, well, luck maybe isn't all of it because there was some sacrifice involved and there were things I missed. And I, we'd be rushing home to get home for the Halloween parade. We weren't able to have laptops and cell phones then to work from home. So I struggled through those years, managed to balance enough and try to do it all, bake the cupcakes, be in the PTA meetings, make sure I'm at the shoots. And, the shoot days are long days. So my daughter will say now she works on a shoot with me as a production assistant. And she says, at the end of a couple of shoot days, she's completely spent and she doesn't know how I used to come home from a shoot and then give them baths and do the homework and get them to bed. And she's like, I just want to lay down. And I don't know, you came home and you did a whole bunch more than I can ever imagine. So that was kind of cool insight from my own 26-year-old daughter, which was pretty cool.
Well, that's really good. That'll give her good insight when she has kids.
Exactly. That's what we're hoping too, to reach people that are trying to do it all. And then you realize you feel like you're falling short, but you have to kind of forgive yourself. You have to let yourself know that maybe you can't do everything, and maybe you're going to forgive yourself for missing something or making that mistake. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm a big believer in trying to impart that on people, even though I'd probably do it over the same way and not forgive myself. If I had to go back, I think I'd do it differently, but life is how it is. We live it. And then in my next chapter was like the 40s. I ended up, believe it or not, I was in a partnership for a while, a business. An associate of mine and I decided to go off on our own after 9/11, and we started our own business together. And we still did toys, which was, I was starting to get it was my third decade almost of in the toy industry. So after a period of time, he wanted to stay in the toy industry. He was a bit younger, and we decided to part ways after a 10-year business together. And then I launched my business Mothership by myself, decided to take on directing instead of producing. And I built my reel from scratch. I mean, I begged clients to let me try and shoot something for them so that I could, because everything about directing is you have to have a reel of work, a body of work to share. So that was like starting over at 50, believe it or not. And then I built this production company myself from 2012 is when I launched it.
How did you come up with the name Mothership?
So my former partner and my former boss used to call me that because I'd be in my office on the phone with the babysitter, and I'd be talking her through what to do with the kids for dinner, or I'll be home in time for this. And I was constantly doing mom things in my office in between my production work. And they would come in and they'd be like, oh, she's doing the Mothership things, and they used to, then they would say,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So they go into the Mothership's office and ask her. So I always was that was my persona as an individual, even though I worked for other companies. So when I was finally going out on my own, I said, I'm going to call it Mothership. And I couldn't get Mothership with an O for the M Corporation. So I said, try a U, and I got it. And that's how I am, Mothership with a U.
That's it. So now today, how big is your company?
So I'm a very small company because when we do the big shoots, it's all day workers. We hire crews. So I have my different crews. So everything is really contract work. And this way I can keep myself lean. I had an office for a long period of time, 10 years I had an office. And then in 2019, I gave it up just before the pandemic. What a blessing that was, because I probably would have just been, I don't even want to think about financially what would have happened if I was paying that city rent on that office through a pandemic when I had no work. Can't even imagine that. So that was like a lucky break that I decided not to renew the lease, just because we were traveling a lot and I wasn't using the office as much. I was doing shoots on the other side of the country, so we'd be renting local space anyway. So I gave up the office, and I've always kept a very lean situation with the work. I have the same people I work with all the time, though. I have the most loyal, consistent, not full-time employees.
Oh, well, that's good. Loyalty is everything, right?
Yes, because we are a collaborative. I am welcoming of everybody's expertise. I don't try to run the show. I'm like, if this person's really good at set design, I lean on that person. This person's really good at casting, I lean on that person. So I think building a collaborative team around you where they feel like they're a part of it just builds loyalty by accident. I treat them right. I compensate them correctly and fairly and on time. And all those things add up to, loyal people that will stick with you.
Yeah. That's great.
I consider them family.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah, that's true. Let's talk about, so now all of a sudden the pandemic does hit.
Yes. The pandemic came in, blindsided all of us. We thought we were going to be home for 2 weeks. Haha. Yeah. So I didn't have any production work. I was bored in the house, and I was in the house bored. Remember that sound? Bored in the house, and I'm in the house bored. I don't know. It was a TikTok sound. So I was like, what am I going to do? So I started making content in my house. And prior to that, on my Instagram, I was interviewing people because I was practicing being an interviewer. So I'd talk to somebody on the street and I'd say, oh, can I interview you for my Instagram? And I would do a little interview. And I was traveling. I had a wedding to go to in Italy, and I was interviewing people there. So my Instagram right before the pandemic was very interview heavy. And I was having so much fun with it. And then I felt like, oh, my bubble got burst because I couldn't even talk to people. We had to have masks on. I'm like, what am I going to do now? So I decided to turn the camera on myself with nobody and get in my kitchen and bake my favorite crumb cake. And then I showed people how to put a duvet cover on. And then I just set up a camera and I started making content. And I decided this is so funny to think about because I remember this moment of thinking, I'm going to be a content creator. I didn't really even know that my whole life I kind of was one because I was making content for brands, but I decided that I was now going to be a content creator in my content and it was going to be my things. And I took that on, and I took it on, like, when I say I took this on like relentlessly, I made video. I was posting content every day. I was sharing things on my story. And then my daughter and I said, let's try TikTok. And the rest is history, because I was baking on TikTok and I was putting all my recipes up there. And then I got a big following of like, 10,000 and then 30,000. And then somebody asked me, how did you do that thing where you made the eggs like magically crack? Because I know how to do transitions because I have a production background. So I was like, oh, I'll make you a tutorial. And when I made a tutorial, I had hundreds of thousands of followers that were like, who is this woman? She's our TikTok teacher. And I took that from the comments and put that into my bio. And I said, I'm the TikTok teacher. I like it.
Yeah.
So that's how that happened. It was like an express train to being a TikTok expert, because I took on my production skills and figured out how to do my production expertise with a phone using TikTok.
Well, I think that's what's so great about your TikToks, is because they're so short and they're so concise. And, sometimes if I'm watching something, I'll have to watch it a couple of times because it's just like, oh yeah, or I'll do it like a freeze frame of what you're doing, so I can like refer back to if I'm trying to learn something new for my edits or something. But it is great, and it's really fun. One of the things I love about you, and I'm sure after this interview, more people will, be following you too, is that you express so much joy.
I love it.
Doing your TikToks, and it's real joy. It's really like, it makes me smile. I'm sure it makes your 880,000, close to 1 million. You're probably going to hit that this year for sure.
Crazy, right? Mm-hmm.
Followers smile too, because you're having so much fun.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing that I try and because people think, oh my God, why are you so happy? I'm like, because this is fun. Like everything I'm doing, I have so much fun doing it. When I do a transition and it's like fire, like we like to say, the young kids say that was fire. I know that I can do a transition as good as any 20 something. I can do it. I have the skills. I understand production wise how to make the magic. And when I do it successfully, I just get so excited that I can't help myself. So when I just have a video that has 4.5 or 6 million views right now that I just posted a few days ago. And it was teaching how to do stop motion with the stop motion effect on TikTok. And let me just tell you, that thing is not trending. That just happens to be a feature that I think is pretty amazing about TikTok. So
that one with the little nail polishes.
Yes, the nail polish thing. Okay. So I decided to I'm going to just teach a lesson. And it wasn't a trending thing, because a lot of times if I'll teach like the moon phase trend, of course that's trending. A lot of people will save that and it might have a potential to go viral. This was kind of like, I'll just teach a lesson. And I didn't even try and go, I did it slowly. I kept saying, and I press the button, then I take my hand out, I move the product, I take my hand out, I press the button. It was so slow, like almost, if you will, like pedantic. Like I felt like do people think I'm going to be talking down to them with this lesson? And
no, I thought it was great. I watched the entire thing and I thought it was just awesome.
The people that watch that, all ages, that now understand how production stop motion works, because I explained it from that higher level. So it wasn't like, here's how you do this one effect, and that's the only thing you're going to be able to do. Now my lessons, you understand the big picture, how it's done, so that you can apply it to other things. And that's how I like to teach it. I also like to teach it the way I would want to be taught. Like, show me on a phone. Don't show me with a screen recording behind you, because I can't. That's another thing. Like you see my stylus and I'm pointing and I'm showing, and it's much clearer for people who are learning. And that's why I think I have a big older following, because I'm teaching it more in a style that we could understand, because we didn't grow up with social media.
We're all, and even to this day, I'm still a very visual person. I would much rather be in front of somebody learning that way versus like reading from a book.
Right. I love it. And I think that when I figure something out on TikTok, I'm like, oh, I got to explain this. I literally explain it every step. Like I don't skip the beginning, because I don't assume, oh, somebody knows how to start a TikTok even. So I always start the lesson with press the plus to start a TikTok. If I listen to a TikTok guru, I would skip over that part. But I'm not listening to a TikTok guru. I'm listening to myself. How would I want to learn if the first time I showed up on someone's page, they were watching my lesson? I would start from the beginning. Press the plus to start a TikTok. Press the thing to add the music. And then I teach the lesson. And nobody leaves, because they want to hear, if they want to learn how to do the thing, they stick around for that. So Yeah. And I have editing skills, so I know how to tighten up my tutorials so that it's not a waste of time where you're like, oh, now people are getting bored. So I just know how to keep it engaged. It's like perfection in production because I know how to do it. And then I also know how to teach it. And it's really fun.
Yeah,
that's why it looks like I'm having fun, because I am.
Yeah, well, it's very obvious to me, and even especially when you're with your daughter and your son and out in the streets, or wherever, it's at the beach, or whatever. It's always really, really fun. But let's transition to your health.
Yes, let's go there.
That is one of the main reasons why not only are you a TikTok sensation and a great TikTok teacher for us older people, but what you went through recently was, I was like in tears, and I didn't even know you. I'm just like,
oh my God. I had people making videos for me that were, it was just.
So let's talk about that, how that all transitioned.
Okay. So because of my social media, I am always documenting things as a rule. So I'm, carrying on with my life, and I'm documenting, like, today I'm at a recording studio, and we're going to this restaurant. I didn't keep my social media feed so tutorial heavy that I couldn't have a life in it. So in between my tutorials, you probably know this, if you go to my page, like, there's a tutorial, and then there's maybe a dance, maybe I'm out on the street, maybe I just saw something in New York. And so my videos kind of go through my life, and then I throw in a tutorial. You know what I mean? So I was doing that anyway. I was documenting things in my life. And so what happened to me is I started to end up at a hospital because I was like losing my sight. And I thought, well, I guess I'll document this. So I'm at the eye hospital because I'm starting to lose my vision and I don't know what's going on. So I would take out my phone and record it because I thought, this is content, because everything in my life, as my daughter and I always say, content, that's our favorite word. We'll be seeing something, we're like, oh, content, or we're going to go somewhere, and we think content. So I was just like, well, this is content. I'm at the eye hospital now. You never know. And I was like joking around with the doctors. Like, did you know that the sonograms were first done on the eyes before they were ever done on babies? Like, that was an amazing stat to me. And when he told me that, I said, oh, do you mind if I record that? So I was getting the doctors involved, and I was recording, but my eyesight got worse and worse during a period of 2 weeks where my husband had to rearrange the cabinets in my house, put things where I could find them. I couldn't see the food on my plate to like fork and eat. It was, all I could see was like light, patches of light. It was terrifying, and scarier than cancer, scarier than dying was being blind. For real. For me, anyway. Whew. So now I'm going to get upset.
Yeah.
Okay. So during that period, I couldn't post because I couldn't friggin' see my phone. So I'd be looking at my phone and like, I hope I'm recording. And I would hold it up. And one day I was like recording, and I was just getting so upset because I'm like, I don't even think I'm in the frame. And my husband walked in. He's like, give me the phone. I'll record you. So he was videotaping for me, and he doesn't even want to be in my content. But to his credit, even though he might have thought, she's crazy, why is she recording this? He still did it for me. He's still, this is hard.
Yeah, I know it's hard.
Okay, hold on. Okay. So during that 2-week period when I couldn't really post because I didn't have eyesight to do it. And I was like, my God, my followers are going to think, where am I? What happened to me? And so I kind of waited it out. I had my daughter finally arrived. She was living in Chicago at the time. And she said, let me come and stay while you're while you're figuring all this out. When she arrived, I said, we have to post something. Let's sit down together. But I didn't want to post something until I had a diagnosis, because I felt like all I'm going to do is alarm, at the time, 500,000 people. And, that are following me, and they're going to be like, whoa, my God. And so invested. And sometimes that's too much when you have so many people worrying and what's happening. So I wanted to wait until I knew what the heck my diagnosis was. And lucky for me, this is going to sound crazy to say lucky, I had severe stomach pain because they couldn't figure out why I was going blind. After 2 weeks at a specialty eye hospital, I had severe stomach pain. And I said to my husband, I can't believe this. You have to take me to the emergency room. I don't know what's going on. And when they did the scans, they found what they thought was ovarian cancer or uterine cancer. I had all these masses they couldn't figure out. And it turned out it was lymphoma that looked like on a scan, it was affecting so many areas of my body. They couldn't even give me a clear diagnosis until I had further tests. So when I finally got the diagnosis, it's lymphoma. We had a plan immediately. I was at NYU. I had a team of doctors. We knew what was going to happen. There was going to be radiation first because the eyesight has to be recovered before anything else can happen, because that's more timely. So I had an eye doctor who said, maybe you'll have one eye back. I mean, it was terrifying to think of it, because now I have my full vision back as the way it was. And she thinks it's a miracle. So I went straight in for radiation. And somewhere in this room, I have my radiation mask. Should have kept it out, but I had to have this radiation shot into my eyes for 10 days straight. It was very draining and tiring, not painful, but I lived it. But let's go back to, I finally did post. Once I got that diagnosis, my daughter and I edited together. She did it. I couldn't really quite see yet. She edited a 7-minute video and we posted it to share with my followers. And then everybody knew. And that went viral because people that were following me sent it to other people. And once people are sending things and saving things, that's when things go viral. And then the world knew that I had a diagnosis and people were with me every step of the way. And once I opened that door, I knew that I couldn't close it. Like, now I'm going to share it in real time. And it was the best thing I could have done for myself, for people who write me all the time and say, my mom is going through this now, and I'm so thankful that I watched you go through it so I know how to support her. Or, I was just diagnosed and I'm not scared now because I saw you do it. So I know I was meant to do it. I know I was meant to share it and tell it. But people have said, I followed you because I'm going to cry. I followed you because of learning TikTok, but now I'm learning about life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. I get it.
Okay. So, yeah. So sometimes I cry for no reason, like now, because I'm fine and I shouldn't be crying. But yeah, it's what happened. I mean, I think that I was meant to tell the story. I was meant to teach what it's like to go through it. And I knew there would be an end. Like, when I was going through it, I barely ever cried. I was always like, one day I'm going to be looking back on this. One day I'm going to be looking back on this. That was my big thing. And I have so much recording of that, of me saying that. And it's funny to be in it now where I am looking back on it. And I have to find those videos because I think I should duet myself at some point. That's good content, right?
That would be.
I'm always thinking about content, but I did, that's the theme here. Even when you're in the lows, you can think about what you want to share and you can decide. So my daughter will say, my mom's crazy because when she gets upset, she'll actually think to pick up her phone and document it. And what I say to that is, I was telling a story, and if I'm shooting a documentary, I'm not only going to show people the good part, like, it's got to be real. So when I was going through it, and I was always so happy, occasionally something would be painful or it would make me cry. I was like, I got to record this so I didn't necessarily want to record myself crying, but I wanted to make sure I was telling a true story, or else it would have been a lie.
No. And I remember going through all that with you and just like, oh my God, I think I even commented, a couple times on some of your videos and stuff. So after you went through the 10 days of radiation, what happened?
So this is crazy. They call it, I think, boom, boom therapy. Well, that was one of the doctor's terms. He said that your eyesight will jump back very quickly if it's going to jump back. And that's exactly what happened. Literally the second day after my second radiation treatment, I could see. And I felt like I was on top of the world. I'm like, bring it on. I could do chemo. I could do whatever's needed to happen now. Once I had eyesight, I felt like I was given my life back. So chemo was like a cakewalk. And it wasn't, by the way, but it was comparatively, it was a cakewalk to be able to go through that and see the needles going in instead of having to not be in this darkness where I couldn't see. The day I finally saw my doctor, I felt like it was the first day I met him, and I had been seeing him, for this period of time. It was so cool to meet the nurses and be like, oh my God, hi. Wow. It was like I was meeting them for the first time. It was just so beautiful. And they were letting me record things and share things. And I just thought, I kept wanting to turn my camera on it because I wanted the story to be true, and it was so helpful that people were willing to be in it with me. And, my family, except for my husband, who doesn't really want to be on social media. And I 100% respect that because he is so supportive of everything I'm doing. But so I respect that he doesn't want to be, in the face of it. But even my family, sometimes my daughter, my kids would be doing my new Lasta on my arm. And I was like, this is a family affair. Somebody videotape it. And so we always had, it was always like, we're making content. This is so fun. And I really was joyful through it. I think I was so happy to have my eyesight that it wasn't fake. It was happy. Like, I've cried more now after the fact than I cried the whole time. I probably cried more today than I cried in the first month. Sorry.
Oh, no,
Sorry,
no,
you guys
no,
be
no. I mean,
subject to
that's
it.
why I like conversations like this because they are real, they are raw. And,
Yeah.
a lot of times when you go through cancer or a bad accident or grieving over a loss of a loved one, I mean, it's, a lot of people don't want to post that on social media
Yeah.
just because they want to do that privately. But when people like you do post things like that, it does help others. She went through it. She was okay. She, whatever. So I commend you for that. And after you went through, the 10 days, you had to continue and finish that up.
Yes. Then I had to go through, I think, 20 weeks of chemo after that. And it wasn't every week. It was every 3 weeks. So it's 24 weeks. It was like every 3 weeks for 24 weeks. Okay. And it was like, that's an interesting process, by the way, because it's like a wave. At least for me, it was. I even said in the beginning, this was like manifestation. I was like, I'm going to be the person that gets no side effects. I made a video about that. I was like, maybe I'm going to be the person, and I kind of wanted to manifest that. I had very little side effects, to be fair. I mean, if I look back on it, I can count them off, and they were like significant things. Like I'd have cramps in my legs, or I never got nauseous. I lost my eyebrows and my eyelashes and things like that. But the side effects of weren't killer for me. They were just, I would have day one, I was like revved up after chemo. And then day two, it would hit me a little bit. And I was like, oh, I'm exhausted and I'd have to lay down. And by day three, I'm starting to come back. By day four, I'm back to myself. And so it was like that kind of, and then I'd have like 2 weeks or 3 weeks till the next one. So I was carrying on. I was shooting commercials. I had a big Sensodyne shoot in the midst of chemo, and I had no hair and was wearing my wigs. My clients were like, man, you have more energy than the PAs on set. That was pretty that was funny times. And then I had this one experience, which was so funny. I had an opportunity when I was blind to have an interview for Adweek. And I didn't want to cancel it because I said, this opportunity is not going to come back again. I was going to be, I wanted to do it. So even though I was blind, this reporter doesn't know to this day that when she interviewed me on Zoom, I could not see her. I set my camera up, had my husband am I in frame? And then I said, can you hit go? Whatever. He hit go for me. And I had this interview. Feigned looking at the camera and managed to get myself through an interview that when I was completely blind. So now I have that story to tell about I was resilient. I was tough. I pushed through. I didn't let it stop me. I didn't want to stop working and say I'm going to go on a hiatus because I wanted my work to be with me at the end. And if I felt like if I turned it off for 4 months, I wouldn't have anything to go back to. I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that.
And it also probably just gives you purpose. I mean,
it did give me purpose. It also made it that when you're going through something in life, like when you have children, then you have that lane. Then maybe you have a dog, you have that lane. You're dealing with work. So you have all lanes all the time. That's how I always look at my life. Like, what lane am I in today? I'm like, where am I now? So I think that chemo was just one of my lanes. And I was not going to let all the other lanes suffer because of this one thing. I wanted to make sure that I was still going forward and I would still have something to look back on at the end of it. And that it was giving me purpose to keep moving forward. I didn't have to be sitting on my couch I turned down that project and now I'm just laying on the couch watching TV or scrolling on TikTok. I just didn't want that to be my life. I wanted it to be normal. I just wanted to keep going. I'm such a driven person. I wanted to just keep going.
Right.
It was the best thing for me.
Oh, obviously the best. And you had purpose and reason to keep on going too.
Yeah.
You loved your job, you love your family. And I think that.
And I wanted to teach I still wanted to teach TikTok too. I was and I would call them my students, everybody who was watching my content. I need to be there for my students. So I couldn't, when I first did a tutorial after I had been out of doing tutorials because I was doing chemo things. And I was I think I can see enough now. I can make a tutorial. I was so excited. It's I'm back. I couldn't wait till I'm back and here's what we're doing today, Yeah. And it was so much fun. And my daughter and I had a lot of fun making kind of dark humor TikToks. We did that too. And probably early on, it freaked people out because I was I'm on a high. I just got, venture capital company just seeded my business. I'm directing commercials, And now, boom, cancer. It was a trend. And I was laying on the floor. And it was just a funny TikTok we made. We thought we were the funniest people ever. So I liked making fun of cancer and making it because I didn't want it to beat me by being too big of a thing in my life. I wanted it to be just that thing that's kind of a thorn in my side that we're just going to push through. And it was really cool. So I want to tell you one thing. Helen.
Exactly.
There was a TikTok follower who told me, this was so random. This is like a good story for how you affect people that you don't even know you're affecting. She happened to have not a great relationship with her mom. And there was like an abusive relationship. And because her mom had cancer, she kept putting it on that, she's got cancer. That's why she's being mean to me, that she's sick. And that's why she's being so angry all the time or whatever. And she said that watching me go through cancer and not being like that, she realized that was not the root of the relationship problem with her parent. And I thought that was really insightful, because we oftentimes will use something as an excuse to be mad about or be angry about or be sad. We look for this excuse. And she watched me to say, wow, you didn't even use that as an excuse. You just kind of said, oh, that's happening. And on we go with your life. And I thought that was just a pretty cool thing to know, that I helped somebody in that way, to see something more clearly.
Right.
Just by living.
No, it's funny you mentioned that, because I had a very estranged relationship with my mom forever and ever. And she's gone now. She's been gone 25 years now. But literally, I'd say this was in July. And I just woke up one day, and I was living in Charlotte, and she lived in Pennsylvania. And I look back now, I feel mortified that I would send her a card for Mother's Day. I would never go visit her. I might go visit her twice a year. And it was just a long, long story. But I just woke up one day and I said, I need to go see Mom. And so my brother and my sister would make fun of me, because they were like, Mom's not going to change. She's in her 60s now, and she's set in her ways, and you need to quit, harboring all this resentment that she smokes and that she drinks and she doesn't take care of herself and this and this and this. And they're like, she is how she is. I mean, why are you getting so worked up over it? So I woke up one day and I said, you know what? They're right. So I called her up and I said, I want to come visit you. And she's like, you do? And I went up there, and all of a sudden it was just like, I started calling her more often. I started going up there to visit more often. And I just kind of let that go.
Let it go. Yes.
And I just visited with my brother and his wife. They live in Florida. And just a few weeks ago, and I made a comment about that, saying, remember how you and Mary always used to get on my case about, you need to just let Mom alone and quit harboring all this resentment towards her. And then all of a sudden, in the fall, she was diagnosed with lung cancer, and then she passed away at Thanksgiving.
Wow.
I was there with her. I was so happy that all that was resolved.
Yes.
Because if I wouldn't have resolved all that, I would still to this day harbor all this guilt. And so, that really was a huge life lesson for me, is that, people are who they are. And, you can talk to them till they're blue in the face, but unless they want to change, nothing's going to change.
That's true.
But that's just,
and it's true that we are who we are at our core. And I think that I get oftentimes, why you so, how do you stay so happy? And I'm like, I don't really have an answer to that. That's just how I am. I can't say that it's because I do this and because I do that. I think we have some kind of a wiring that's in us, and that's just who we are. So your mom is who she is, and if you meet her on her terms, then you can make it work. Or,
that's what's happening. And she was even, making comments to my family and even some friends when she got sick. One of my closest friends called her, and she was like, I don't know what happened to Helen, but we've kind of resolved everything, and she's just been great. And I was like, ooh, so
that's so good.
I mean, and the fact that she realized it and recognized it, was great. So I always tell, if I'm coming across people and they don't talk to their parents anymore, whatever, I'm like, well, revisit that. I don't know what happened, but if and when they go, are you going to regret anything? Because
you don't want that to be behind you. I know.
But what I wanted to ask you about your cancer or your chemo, we all love our hair.
So that'll be my next round of tears.
Your hair. I mean, I just, I think we spoke before we started recording, and I, shared that I had leukemia. I haven't gone through chemo yet. And I think the chemo now has advanced so far now that depending on what type of chemo you get, you may lose hair, you may not. So
yeah, you can also wear a cold cap. But, for me, I had the cancer behind my eyes, right? That's where mine manifested. So I could not wear a cold cap. A lot of people were advising me, because that's the other thing. Once you put yourself out there with this stuff, you're going to get advice you didn't ask for. people are going to, and to me, I took it as they all care. And this is not something they're trying to be mean about, but people were like, you should wear a cold cap and you don't have to lose your hair. And a lot of people were like disagreeing with me about things. And I'm like, I just really, thankfully, I don't take on the hate or the mean things. I just let them go. But I couldn't wear a cold cap because of where my cancer was manifesting behind my eyes. So I had to shave my head. And I will say this, the shaving of my head wasn't half as bad. If I look back on that, even at the time, I had a little minute where my daughter was like, say these words, my hair does not define me. And we did this little thing before she did the shaving, and we did it all on social media, of course. And so, so when we did, and then I had like a little moment where I got a little weepy, and then I was like, onward, and this is what I have to do. But what's weird is now it's like the grow back, because I thought when cancer's over, I'm going to feel great. Well, guess what? As soon as I was done with chemo, I thought I'm going to bounce back and I'm going to be like Superwoman. I could barely move. My muscles got attacked so bad by chemo that it took me, the fact that I could lift weights before and I could barely pick up like a 10-pound weight was unbelievable to me. I was sore all the time. So that's where it really attacked me. It attacked my muscles. And now it's slowly starting to come back. And having my hair grow back and not being immediately me again was really hard. It was a really hard truth to face. And I have definitely shed tears about it, which is crazy because it's hair and it's going to grow, and don't be ridiculous, Helen, and all of those things that I could say to myself, that I'm thankful to have eyesight. Why are you crying about your hair? The fact is I could be happy, thankful, and joyful in my life, and I could still be sad about my hair. You know what I mean? The word "and" is very powerful. We can be many things. We don't have to just, one thing does not define us. So when I started to realize like, oh, I'm going to be a little sad about my hair. People think I'm older now. I've always been mistaken for much younger because I always had long hair, blonde, my bangs and all of my stuff. And yeah, people could say your hair's cooler now. It's edgier. You look better. And they're giving me all these great compliments. And I mean, thousands of people on the internet. I have to believe it myself though. So this tells me that thousands of people on the internet can tell me something good or bad, and I'm not going to believe it if I don't believe it myself. And so it goes both ways, right? So if you're strong enough in your conviction, you're not going to believe the people that come at you with hate, but you're also, unfortunately, not going to believe the people that are trying to tell you something good. And It's hard for me because I just am not used to being mistaken for older, or people think this is gray, or whatever the issues are. Then I get really upset because I'll get mistaken for being my mom's sister, and she's 85. And I'm like, what? And then I'm crying about that. So I'm trying to cope, and I know that I will get myself back soon. And I'm much better than I was a month ago. So every month it gets a little better and better. And I'm like, okay, we're going to get through this, and I'm not going to get upset about it anymore. And I just keep pushing on and knowing that it's like, I'm thankful and grateful to be here still.
Right. And so talk about your, you have wigs. I've seen you. So how was that whole process?
So I wanted to wear the wigs when I was during chemo, and this was my big reason for it. I think that when people do a short hair like this is purposeful and intentional. When you have no hair because of chemo, you look sick. You also have no eyebrows. You have no eyelashes. You look a little odd. So I did not want to portray sickness. And that was my biggest reason for not wanting to just like, oh, go natural, wear scarves, blah, blah, blah. Everybody has advice. Great, great, great. But I didn't want other people to be like, oh, she's the sick one. So I'd be on the shoot and my wig, and half the people wouldn't even know I had cancer unless they were more involved or watched me on social media. But, that was not a thing that I wanted to portray. I wanted people to just view me as an equal, and we carry on from there. And so wigs were really important to me during my chemo process. So only until I started to actually have real hair growth again. And then I said, now people could assume that I decided to be an edgy woman and shave my head or give myself a buzz cut. So then I felt it like, okay, I still didn't want to take off my wigs. It took me a couple of months of hair growth before I committed to it. And a lot of it was my daughter, like, you look great. You look awesome. Let's bleach it. It's going to be edgy. And she's like, Mom, you look like a badass. And I just, yeesh. I just wanted to be an example for her to accept herself.
Yeah.
It was like, oh gosh, here we go. She said, like, if it was me, you would be like, you're cool, And she's like, you would want me to be me. So I want you to be you. So I was like, oh God. So she, I did it like, not really initially begrudgingly. I didn't do it at first by my own choice. I did it because I'm like, I'm going to show her that, yes, I'm going to be me and I'm going to accept who I am now. Boom. And I took the wigs off. And it was so hard because I still didn't feel like myself. I'd catch myself in the mirror. I still do. I'm like, who are you in the mirror? It doesn't seem like me, but a little at a time. Maybe it'll become me again.
Our hair is a part of our identity.
So important. I'm sorry to say.
As women, especially, we all love our hair.
Oh,
and
we love
you
our
could
hair.
have on the most fabulous gown, and you could have beautiful makeup and spectacular jewels. But if your hair looks like crap,
I'm telling you, Helen,
you feel like you feel like crap.
You feel like crap. That's why bad hair days are real. But it's funny too, because when I decided to not wear the wig, I was just like, oh. I was trying to explain, people have things about them. Like there's the women who are like really into makeup. That's not me. My hair was my thing, kind of, I had it was like a little bit of it was just the thing I took more time on. Other people they do more facials or they do the Botox or they do, whatever the maintenance things they want to do. Right. I didn't worry about those things, but my hair was my thing, So it was like, man, it took the thing from me. Like if somebody was really into like doing the fillers and the Botox and somebody said, oh, by the way, you can't go to the doctor anymore and get that would crush you. That's just part of how you feel good.
Yeah.
I've accepted my lines and I'm on with that, but I wanted my hair. I wanted my hair, Helen. Anyway.
No, I get it. So now, have you put your wigs away for good now, or do you bring them back out every now and then to kind of switch things up?
Such a good question. Such a funny question. The wigs are right here in a closet behind me, and occasionally when I go on TikTok live, and one time I got on and I was like, oh, let me get my wigs out, and I was doing a try on of the wigs again for fun. I would take the wigs out now when I do a transition on TikTok if I want to do, because people do like persona changes and transitions, and you snap.
Right.
So the wigs come in real handy for me now because I'm like, oh, I wanted to show how to do this outfit change, but I want it to be really dramatic. So I'll pop one of my wigs out and I'll do it. I'll do that. And I did one TikTok when I was on vacation. It was the first time I really decided to embrace the no wig look. And I did when chemo gives you a makeover that you didn't ask for, and I snapped my fingers and I had the wig on and the wig off. And that's the one that exploded with people saying, don't ever put the wig back on. And there was a huge creator with 8 million followers, young guy, by the way, young man. His name is Nick something. And he duetted it. And he said, this woman is a badass. And this was a TikTok famous young hip dude that duetted my video.
Wow.
It was so cool. And he was like, and he even wrote in the comments, run this up for the mothership. We love her. And I was like, wow. So it was just really validating. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to embrace all of the lovely people who are with me in this and want me to move forward and embrace it. And I'm like, I'm just going to ditch the wigs. And I decided to do it. And it's hard, but I'm committed now.
Right. Well, and I think what it's also too, and I think is that so many women, when they hit that second chapter of life, they're going through all these transitions with menopause,
Yes.
They're becoming empty nesters. Their relationships might be changing after 30 years and now they're getting a divorce. Yes. And then with the pandemic, and then all of a sudden they're like, what do I do now? What do I do now? So to see someone like you in their 60s who all of a sudden has this niche,
it's crazy.
On social media, and that that to me is just so redefining because
it is so good.
The thing is age is irrelevant. And when I won this big national bodybuilding show back on my 60th birthday, which was so amazing.
Oh my God!
I had all these women reach up to me and they go, "How'd you do it? How'd you do it?" I'm like, well, "Age is irrelevant. Irrelevant. And so now today, I've been a big proponent in the pro leagues for older masters athletes and give us categories that we can compete in. It's in 50 plus and 60 plus. And all the promoters have listened to us. And now that's the case, which is amazing. But all these women now, they're coming out of the woodwork. Now they're starting to lift weights in their 60s and their 70s, and they're starting to compete these bodybuilding shows. I'm like, I'm in the best shape of my life in my 60s. I mean, back in the 20s when I was, in college and I was actually on the track team at the University of Kentucky, you would have thought that I would have been in the best shape of my life, but I wasn't. It wasn't until I started really seriously lifting weights in my late 50s is when I started bodybuilding. And then my body just magically started, transforming before my eyes. And I'm like an online fitness and nutrition coach too. And I mainly help women in their 50s and their 60s. And I've had the most amazing testimonials and changes where they're like, you've saved me. You've helped me so much. Eating clean now and getting into a routine of weight training and seeing this transformation. Now their families are thrilled. Their friends are commenting how great they look. Now they feel better about themselves. And that's the whole thing, is that just because you're 50 or in your 60s or in your 70s, that doesn't mean that you can't start something new. You can't start over. You can't find that new passion or hobby.
I love this. First of all, you're so inspirational, and everything that you are doing is just, it's such a, I would say, like, you're a role model to other women that are older, because a lot of women will use it as an excuse. Like, oh, I'm older now. I can't do that. And we know those women that will make the excuses. Mm-hmm. And I think you're proving that you don't make your excuses. Just do what you want to do. The thing that I find most amazing now is that we have the advantage, because of social media, of seeing people reinvent themselves. Whereas before, you might see it on TV. You watch Changemakers and it might be a segment on someone. We get to see, we used to not be able to see it so prevalent. And now we can actually every day see somebody inspirational by watching social media. And I think that is such an advantage. It's also an advantage for young people, because you want young people to see you're not stuck. I mean, people think they're stuck at the age of 30 or 40. I mean, you are so not stuck. You have a whole life to live ahead of you. You could change what you're doing. I always said, oh, I'm not going to be a director. I don't have the talent for that. And now look at me, at 50, I decided, okay, now I have the confidence to do it, because with age comes that confidence. And that, like, I don't really give a shit. If I fail, I'm going to try. You have more of an allowance of, so what? If I don't succeed, okay, it's fine. I'm going to try it anyway. And that's the beauty of having the experience of being older. And that's why age is irrelevant. It's only relevant to give you confidence.
Well, and also too, all the life experience that we've had,
awesome.
It's like that it just all adds up, and so, living life now, you can make wiser decisions based on decisions that you've made in the past.
Yes.
Back in my 20s and 30s, you're all about gossiping and this and that and whatever. Now it's like, just like you were saying, I stay in my lane. If I think I have to think twice about opening up my mouth about saying something, I'm like going, okay, just make sure if you open up your mouth and you make comments about things, that be prepared for the backlash, if whatever. So, but I just think that women today, we're here to redefine and remold and get rid of that old stigma, over the hill. Once you turn 40, I'm thinking, you probably felt this way too. When I was in my 20s, I'd be like, oh my God, when I turn 40, oh my God, it's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be a nightmare.
It's going to be old, right?
That's just 20 years away. Oh no, what's going to happen? Now it's like, I'll be 66 in a couple of months, and I'm like, I'm already planning, what do I want to do for my 70th birthday,
Right.
And every decade I had big parties. I went on a trip over to Europe. I mean, I've done great things to celebrate that new decade. And that's how you need to look at, life's not guaranteed. So, especially with, having a condition that I have, everything is great so far, but it's just like, I don't want to have I say this a lot on my social media, I don't want to have on my tombstone, should have, would have, could have.
Should, oh God, no.
I don't want to end up in a hospital bed and have regrets of like, well, I should have done this and I should have done that. So I'm just I just live my life as full as I can. And I do things that I find, passionate, and joyful. And just like you, I celebrate you because you are one of them. And you are just leading the pack and just making such a great example, especially when you went through your, cancer scare. I just thought, I can't imagine losing your sight, and then the thought of not being able to get it back, but then, getting it back. And then just like you're saying, you're having all this overwhelming gratefulness. But at the same time, when you talked about this, PTSD, right? Post-traumatic stress syndrome.
PTSD. Yeah, PTSD.
PTSD. But you didn't really even have time to grieve. I mean,
no,
like
I
now
didn't.
You're looking back and you're crying, but maybe now you're like letting yourself grieve over that whole situation because you were so focused on,
Exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. I didn't allow myself, because I wasn't going to let myself go there. And even sometimes we, in the dark of night, like we think, oh, we're so positive during the day. And then you lay in bed at night and things start to, the ugly monsters come out. I think even when I was in the midst of chemo, I never really let those ugly monsters in. Occasionally, maybe I'd have a night where I'd be like, it was mostly for me about my sight. I never really thought I'm not going to be here for something. Like I never thought about death. Isn't that crazy? Like the whole time I thought I just was crying, thinking about like, if my children ever have children, I'm never going to be able to see my grandchildren. I was crying about that. Or like just things that were sight related was what was getting to me. And those were the things that were like dark of night. I'd be like, I'm never going to be able to babysit my grandkids now when they ever come, because I won't be able to be left alone with them because I won't have eyesight. Like I was going down stupid paths that were related to eyesight. So the minute the eyesight, and that was a period of 2.5 to 3 weeks. So as soon as I had my eyesight back, those scaries were gone for me. And I didn't really ever think about death as a scary thing at all. I definitely thought, I am so lucky to be alive right now. I am so lucky to have eyesight, that I never really thought about it other than that. So I think now a little bit I'm having PTSD of looking back on, gosh, that was close. And maybe I should have been more scared. And so now I think that's what I'm feeling. And all these, I never expected to cry today, by the way, Helen. I'm really sorry, because I haven't really cried when I talked about this in the past.
I think I don't want to say I'm happy that you did, but I'm happy that you were able to let your feelings show, because what you're experiencing is real. And
very real.
There's no reason to pent all that up. I mean, I look at myself as a strong person, but I can cry at the drop of a hat. I'll watch a TV commercial. I'll watch a TikTok. I'll start to cry, especially if it's like some cute little animal. I'm like, so I totally get it, and I appreciate your rawness and your vulnerability.
Thank you for allowing it.
But what kind of advice would you have for a woman in their 50s or 60s who are looking to, start something new, switch things up, find something like a passion or a new hobby or something?
Don't be afraid of failure. It's just, that's the big thing, because I think people's fear of judgment and fear of failure is what stops them from doing anything. I'm going to tell you that one of the things my mother says about me, I hate to throw my mother into this, but she always says, you're so impulsive. She loves to use that word with me, that I'm a tornado and that I'm impulsive, her 2 words. And my answer to that, I used to be like so annoyed by it in a way and be like, why does she always have to, say that about me? I'm not a tornado and I'm not impulsive. But I think what she's misdirecting or maybe misstating it, the words that should be used are, I'm decisive and I do things. So I'm not impulsive. I'm decisive. Like I decide we're doing that and I do it. So it's not about like me being like a random rash decision. I just know what I'm going to do. Like I want to do this. Oh, I'm going to do that. Or if I see something and I'd say, oh, we're going to pick this couch or that couch. I'm like, that's the couch I like better. Boom. I'm just decisive. And I think to her, that's fearful to her. Like she needs 5 years to decide on a couch or something like that, whatever her decision. And I'm not wired that way. I'm wired as a very decisive person. So I don't take that as negative anymore. I used to. And now I'm like, I told her too. I said, I know that word that you love to use about me is impulsive, but I just want you to know that you should be using the word decisive. I just said, I had to tell her that because I felt like I'm tired of that being like a negative thing. I think impulsive, when it's productive, is like a decisive person. And so making a decision and acting on it without being fearful is the advice that I would give to older women.
Yeah. Well, and also too, I think there's with social media now, there's platforms where if you want to learn something or you want to get into a community, you can go on Facebook. You can join all different kinds of local groups in your city if you're interested in learning something new.
Yes, my God.
And I think especially with women, especially older women now who are going through, maybe kids are gone and they have all extra time on their hands or whatever, that, looking forward to doing something, looking forward to being in a group of like-minded people who share the same common interests as you. It's the one thing that live longer.
Yes. And the one thing that I feel is so important about what I'm doing now is when I think of all the older people that are following me and that have started posting on social media because they learned from me, I feel that so many of us have something that is valuable to share. And it's maybe different, very different, but because they don't know how to share it on social media, they're not letting their kind of juices be shared with the world. So what I'm hoping to do, and that's why I have a socialized business, hellosocialized.com. I have a socialized creator community Facebook page, the Facebook group that has already 500 people in it that are that are like-minded people that want to learn how to create content so they can share their expertise. And it's so fulfilling to do that, because even if you have a small following and you can teach them something or share something about what you know about how to be a really good salesperson, if that's what you are, and you were really good at the top of your game, you might have knowledge to impart on young people getting into sales. So I love this whole idea of giving the people the teaching them how to fish versus like giving them a fish. Like, let me teach you how to create so that you can now share it the way you want to share it on whatever platform you want to share it on. So that is why I feel like I'm meant to be doing this. And that's why I think my following has grown, because I am meant to help other older creators or younger creators learn how to do it so that they can feel fulfilled. It's just such a rewarding thing.
Well, and I think also too with TikTok, and what I love about it is that I see young creators, I see older creators, I see older than me in their 70s or 80s on TikTok now. And there's like, they're in their 20s. I'm not listening to them. Or they're in their 80s. I'm not listening to them. I'm listening to the content. And I'm like, I love that. I have the little app. It's called Pin Talk. And so I have like little categories. And if I like something, recipes, fitness, cleaning, whatever, tutorials on TikTok, I'm like shooting all these files so I can just go back, because I have learned so much, and I'm not looking at, they're only 15. No. They don't know what they're talking about. I'm like, that's a great idea.
Age is irrelevant.
Right. That's right. I
love you for that.
Yeah. So if people want to find you on your social media channels, where can they go?
All right. So TikTok and Instagram, I'm at The Mothership with a U. So include the and the U. And then I do have the teaching platform, which is hellosocialize.com. Also the Instagram at Hello Socialize, where you can learn how to create content, the tips to all the platforms. On the Socialize website, I have workshops that are everything is free, and you can come in and learn an editing workshop and at a nice slow paced hour of learning how to edit. And all of that is available on my website, hellosocialize.com.
Oh, this has been like the best hour. I'm just so happy that we were able to connect. I think your story is so inspiring. I just think what you're doing for the world, literally, is just, fantastic. And, I laugh because I enjoy posting, but for me, it's like, oh my God, I want to say a 60-second thing. It takes me an hour because I'm messing up. And then I have to go back in, and then I'm it's just like, oh my God, so, but anyway, so, Helen, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. And what you're doing here is incredible. And I'm just so happy to know you and inspired by you. It's really awesome. So thank you for inviting me. It's been a roller coaster of a ride today.
Yeah, well, a good roller coaster. And I love roller coaster. I'm going to Disney next week with my family. Oh, you are?
I love roller coasters. I was in Disney 3 weeks ago with my son. Yeah. My autistic son.
I'm going to Disneyland, but I'm like, I can't wait to ride the roller coasters.
Yep. All right, we're coaster girls. That's good. We have that in common.
That's awesome.
All right, thank you so much, fellow coaster enthusiast.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
I sure hope you enjoyed this conversation with Helen. It was candid, compelling, and emotional as we both got choked up at various points in the conversation. Here are some takeaways. Number one, Helen is a great example of reinventing yourself at any age. So many of us let a number get in the way of accomplishing a goal or pursuing a dream or a passion. Helen used her years of experience to branch out and carve out a new niche in her 60s, and she is thriving doing it. Number two, Helen's don't give up attitude no matter what has the champion mindset written all over it. She is a force of nature and a source of inspiration that we can all aspire to be, especially when it comes to our health. Our health is our wealth, and so many times we take our health for granted. Put yourself in her shoes. What would you do, literally, if you started to go blind overnight? Number three, when I asked her about what kind of advice would she give to women in their 50s and 60s, she said, don't be afraid of failure. People's fear of judgment and fear of failure stops them from doing anything. And this is so true. I have experienced this personally myself. And honestly, life was really all about failure. If we don't fail, then we would not learn from our mistakes. And if we don't learn from our mistakes, then we don't grow. Think about where you are now as a woman in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond versus a woman in your 20s, 30s, or even as a teenager. Life's experiences bring so much knowledge and so much wisdom to all of us. And in this second chapter of life, we need to take all this valuable information that we have accumulated over the years to live our best lives and to help others along the way, showing them just how great it truly is to be queenagers. If you would like to get a hold of Helen, you can find her on TikTok and Instagram at The Mothership, and that's with a U, MUTHERSHIP. You can find her also on Instagram at Hello Socialize, where she has that page devoted to free workshops, tutorials, and lessons all about TikTok and editing and all that fun stuff. And you can also find her on the web at hellosocialize.com. You can find me at agesofrelevant.com, and you can also reach out to me on Instagram at HelenFritch_IFBB Pro if you want to send me a message. And you can also send me a message at my website at helen@agesofrelevant.com. I greatly appreciate your patronage, and thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you love this podcast or you know someone else who might love this podcast, please share. And if you haven't already given me a review on iTunes, I would greatly appreciate if you did. And until next time, don't ever forget, age truly is irrelevant. Bye-bye.